Good afternoon. How are you today? Well, it feels pretty comfortable out, although the temperature is hovering somewhere in the 80s. The news that I'm enjoying happened about an hour ago, although you'll see this much after that. And it is that Attorney General Garland stated that because Trump has given public notice of the search, he has made a motion on behalf of the Department of Justice by his attorneys to release the search warrant and the receipt of property, which I assume is the inventory of what was taken. Now, some of it may be classified, but the inventory, if that's what he's talking about, will not describe more than the most general fashion what was taken, so it can be identified later as taken during the search. I think this is a good step forward. That is, Garland stepping out. And I think it is a fair response and a strong response to all this talk about the search warrant and all the knocking about it. And he has a legitimate reason to sustain the integrity of the department, particularly when this was a regular filing, if you will. That is to say, there was evidence to support an inquiry into whether or not a crime had been committed, and there was cause to believe there was property and documents at Mar-a-Lago that would prove that. So this will be a general description. You'll be disappointed if you expect a lot from the kind of form that is the search warrant itself, when you can exercise the warrant, what you can look for, and so forth. And often they have only the most generalized invocations of the code that applies. And it's possible that they'll be more specific. If they say 371, which is a conspiracy charge, that suggests that more than Trump is involved in the inquiry, and that may be true. Doesn't mean they'll find it doesn't even mean that they'll necessarily find and prosecute a crime. But I'm encouraged, and you've heard me speak critically of Garland before, but I am encouraged that he's stepping out. It couldn't come at a better time, and this couldn't be a better time given, I don't know if it's a newfound courage or it's a realization how important this is. In the Washington Post this morning, there was a story that I found pretty depressing, which is that historians were sitting at the White House with the president. Not that itself was depressing. And they were discussing history, past circumstances in which the democracy was at risk. And they were comparing, among other periods, 1940s, before the war, when there was a lot of unsettledness in America and elsewhere, and comparing that to now and what would be appropriate. And the message, although they didn't give the detail of the conversations, and Biden was present remotely because this was while he was recovering, I believe, the message was democracy's at risk and we have to act. I'd like to believe that the impulse to do what we've been doing in recent days, to hold those people accountable for what they've done, is part of that reaction. Because I firmly believe, as much as I think of myself as a rebel, I'm basically a law-abiding citizen who believes that we have to start with the laws we have and amend and revise them by our First Amendment exertions to say this law is good or bad, or to say it as a lawyer in a case, or as a judge, or whatever official position you have. And we haven't had enough of that, of those people who seem to float astronomically above the law and all the rules that apply to every one of us, but not to them. So I'm encouraged by this act. I have to stand in reserve and repeat what I've said before, that I'm with Tom Cruise. Where are the charges? And I'm hoping they're going to come, and these steps are in that kind of a direction. That is, a more forceful look at the misconduct at the highest level in historic terms of Trump and his cronies. So that's a very important thing. I think that the recent occurrences at an FBI headquarters in which somebody went there with a gun, and the very heated, inciting language of the Trump supporters suggesting all manner of violence and raising questions that are irresponsible without evidence, particularly while misinforming the nation as to what the facts are. In my lifetime, I've been in situations where the circumstances were not stable. I mean, one was as a young man at Columbia, we had the so-called riots there in 1968, and there were demonstrations through 69, and there was the Democratic Convention in which it was basically police brutality for First Amendment exertions. And there was a heavy-handed choice of who would be the nominee of the party, and because of that, Nixon became president, and he continued to lie and be corrupt. So bad things have a way of continuing, but nothing, those are the no-see-ums, I'm batting away. Nothing compares with the outrageous and historic misconduct of Trump. But as I said on the air last night as a guest with Ari Melber, my favorite host, that's probably true. I just like the way he improvises. And, you know, our issue was, here's a man, only time in history an American president or former president has invoked the Fifth Amendment as a mobster would in order to avoid discussing the misconduct alleged by his firms to take information and to use it in a misleading fashion for debt and for taxes. So we are in a special time, and I'm hoping that people are not awakening too late. It is also happening at a time when some of the forces that suggest disorder and instability are coming into focus. I'm talking about inflation, I'm talking about employment, I'm talking about our economy. And if that becomes regularized, then the focus will be on these other things that we can consider the Alito prize, that is to say, his devastating decision. Guns, which prompted an outburst in Texas in which some man thought it was funny that the children of Uvalde were shot down dead, and he was laughing. And he was taken back for it by Beto O'Rourke, who's running for governor there. So we have a special time in America, and it would be nice to see our leadership, whether appointed or elected, take over the responsibility that they seem to have left by the side of the road. So that's a little bit of my thinking today, and I hope all's well with you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.